throughout the course of TikTok, I have become friends with the Attorney General, Keith Ellison. And I talked to him about this, and he said to me, Mandi, if they haven't killed me and they haven't killed Ilhan, they're not going to kill you. And here's really where it comes down to, I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. And if I go down swinging for trans kids and kids in the LGBTQ community, I can sleep at night.
Hey, welcome to Connection Request. I'm Joel Leeman. This is Season 2, Episode 2. Big special thanks to our presenting sponsor, SK Coffee. Today on the show, we're talking to Mandi Jung, better known as Sabocat on TikTok and Instagram. She's a public school teacher who has grown a large following on TikTok, sharing both her thoughts and resources on teacher unions, the intersection of capitalism and education, and other critical issues in her space. Wanted to have a teacher on the show for a long time because of how important education is in our society and how many people in my life either are currently or have been teachers. Many of you know I was going to be a music teacher until I switched majors at the last minute in college. I love Mandi's joy and passion for both students and teachers alike, and I think you'll hear that come through in the interview. We discuss what the broader public gets wrong about teachers, her friendship with Minnesota's Attorney General, the far right's push to delegitimize public education, and about what it's like to get roasted by Fox News and mentioned by Donald Trump. We also get into why she started her TikTok out of spite, her run-in with Dave Matthews, and we do a quick round of hot takes on important issues like book bans, free lunch, and critical race theory. As you'll be able to hear, we have a lot of fun in this one. We'll get to my conversation with Mandi after a quick word from our sponsor, SK Coffee. This season, we are thrilled to be sponsored by SK Coffee, a specialty coffee roaster based in Minnesota, shipping worldwide. Listeners of the show will remember Sam from Season 1, where he shared his journey from musician to entrepreneur. We'll hear more from Sam later in the episode.
So my name's Mandi Jung. I love to have fun. I'm a Leo. I was born in South Dakota. I've lived in Minneapolis, St. Paul for the last 10 years. And I am a TikToker. I'm a teacher, TikTok content creator. I've been teaching for about 8 years. And I've been making TikToks for 3. And my platform sort of took off during the possible joint strike between my union, St. Paul Federation of Educators, and the actual strike of Minneapolis Federation of Teachers and their EA division. I got a lot of local attention for that. And I'm a union girly. I am a documented anti-capitalist. And I don't know when to stop talking. Those are the things you should know about me.
Well, that seems like a great place to start. I want to get into all of that and more. But first, I'd love to just kind of map out your journey through today. You grew up in South Dakota. You went to the University of South Dakota. Mm-hmm. You studied chemistry and theater.
I did.
Around that time of life and kind of pre-college, like what was your thinking about career and where you wanted to head and what you wanted to do?
So I love theater and I love being witnessed. Turns out I don't exactly, as an adult, I figured out I don't love playing a character. I just love attention. And I really, what I wanted to be when I was a kid was a talk show host, but I didn't know how to do that. So I thought, I would work as an actor for a little while. I never had any, I'm from South Dakota, so our dreams are kind of small. So I was like, well, if I could just work at a summer stock or something, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be an actor. I've always wanted to be a teacher. I think there's a lot of overlap in acting and teaching. When I was a little kid, that's what I played. My mom had a daycare. And my dad always says, you've been bossing people around since you could talk. We would play school and we would play circus, and I was the ringmaster. So those were really the 3 jobs that I knew about that I wanted to do. Talk show host, teacher, or ringmaster. And really, as a teacher, you do all of those things. Like, so yeah, I did a lot of theater growing up. I worked in the summer at a children's theater at Storybook Island. I was one of the Storybook Island players. So we would do short plays for the kids who would come to the park. So, all original plays, but like based on fairy tales.
Yeah.
And then did some summer stock. And after college, I worked for the Missoula Children's Theater and traveled around the country.
Amazing.
I also got fired from Hardee's. I got fired from a smoothie shop.
Oh, wow.
I was Calamity Jane one summer. That was my job.
Okay. Why'd you get fired from both of those jobs?
So I got fired from Hardee's. In South Dakota, you can work. This was back in 2000, the year 2000. So I was 13 or 14, and they were like, girl, you're not smart enough to work at Hardee's. I was like, I agree. Yeah, I totally agree. So I got fired just for like, it was like, this isn't a good fit for you. And I was like, yeah, true. That was the last job I ever wore a hat for. Okay. I don't wear hats. Okay. And the smoothie shop I got fired from for I knew this. The owner would do like sting operations. We made fresh juice. And she would send somebody in like 5 minutes before closing and be like, can I get a fresh juice? And you had to make it, which means you had to disassemble the thing and re-clean it. And I was like, no, I'm not good. No.
Not
and
doing
then
that.
Yeah. And then I got fired.
Wow. One and done situation. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
What?
Well, they like stopped putting me on the schedule and I was like, heck, I don't need this job.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when you worked after college, and you traveled the country and you were acting then, like at that point, it sounds to me like you were fulfilling your dreams and aspirations and more. Like you were living and making money like as a paid
I was making
actor.
a little.
So you're making some money, right? I guess I don't know how much you're making, but like, how was that experience? And were you like, yeah, I'm doing it? Were you like, this is a starting point and eventually I'll move to LA? What was your thinking at that time?
So the way that the children's theater worked is you're a team of two. So like you and I would go to a small town, Spirit Lake, Iowa, and we would cast between 50 and 60 local kids and then teach them a musical, an hour-long musical that they would perform on Friday or Saturday. And then on Sunday, you drive to the next town. So It was super intense. And it was a really interesting experience because working professionally in theater is a very ego-driven profession. And when you're up there performing in Estevan, Saskatchewan, they're not there to see you. They're there to see their kids. So it was a really interesting experience, and I did it for a long time. Most people do it for a summer, and I did it for 4 years. And like, yes, I love sharing theater with people. But I think and you stay in people's homes. So I got to do all kinds of really interesting experiences because of that. And I went to 47 states and like 4 Canadian provinces in those 4 years. But during that time, you don't know anybody. And the only person you know in town is your tour partner. So you have a lot of time to think. And I realized that like, I don't really like acting. I just like attention. And I like working with kids. I never thought that was going to be like, I had these teacher aspirations, but I sort of put them on the shelf because I didn't know how to like manage my own mental health as well as the mental health of children. I really admire parents because I don't know if you're a parent, but like y'all are nuts. That's totally woof. What a way to live your life.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, so eventually you're like done with that.
Well, what I really needed was financial stability. My mental health is like very delicately balanced on like financial security. So the life of an actor was too financially volatile for me to ever feel like safe, really.
Yeah.
So I moved in with my parents for a couple months, and then they were living in Millbank, South Dakota, which is a town of, I think, 3,000.
Okay.
And I was going bananas. I was like sorting the laundry by color. Like I would just do the blues and then I would just do the oranges. Like I was losing
Why
it.
not?
I was losing it. So I talked to my mom and she gave me an ultimatum and she was like, it's been really hard having you on the road. You can move to Fargo or you can move to Minneapolis. And I was like, I'm going to move to Minneapolis. And kind of the rest is history.
And then at some point, I know you worked at Whole Foods. And
Yep.
at the time, I believe that was a good thing, but you got passed over for a promotion.
Exactly.
And that's why you decided to become a teacher. What, like with the benefit of hindsight, tell me a little bit about your time at Whole Foods. And then also like, how do you feel about the decision now to jump into teaching?
For sure. So I really liked working at Whole Foods. This was pre-Amazon. And they did a lot then to nurture the individual employee. So I was like the sample girl because I'm, very outgoing, and I was teaching classes, like helping with the onboarding training. I was a cashier, and then I became a customer service manager, and I did cash up where you like count the money at the end of the day or whatever, or overnight. Anyway. But yeah, I applied to be the assistant manager of the customer service team, and I was passed over, and I was devastated.
Yeah.
And it was one of those moments where it was so traumatic. Like I handled it really badly. And I zoomed out and I was like, what are you doing? Like, you're really sad that you're not the assistant manager of a grocery store. Like, is this really what you want to do with your life? And no shade to anybody who like really does want to do that, but I always felt like I wanted to have more impact. And I wanted to, it's important to me to be remembered, which is ironic coming from somebody who like doesn't want to have children. But that's really a deep value of mine, is the idea of being forgotten is really terrifying. So I sort of, that value of mine impacts a lot of the decisions I make, which is probably why I'm in education. Because you can have a really lasting impact on people's lives, good or bad. But you won't be, in the dustbin for too long. Anyway. So I did some Googling and I found some programs for people who had a science degree for them to get an accelerated teaching license. And the one that I ended up picking was called TC2, which I don't remember what that stands for. I was in the last cohort, but it was a social justice focused teaching program. And that like blew my head wide open. And and we student taught for a year, which I really think everybody should do. I think that's the right model personally, because you see, your year really does go up and down and up and down. And when you only student teach for, 8 weeks or whatever in March, the teacher has already set up all the rituals and routines. You're missing out a lot of that important stuff. You wanted to be a teacher as well. So so the TC2 program, I got in and student taught for a year, and then that summer I went back to Whole Foods and was working all summer because it was fun. Like I love the people I work with. And near the end of August, my roommate was like, "Are you going to get a job? Like a teacher job?" I was like, "Oh yeah, shoot."
Oh
like,
yeah. That's what I'm doing here.
And with TC2, you student taught at several schools in the cities. And the school that I ended up working at was one that everybody else had student taught at except for me. So it was really cool. And it's been a great fit. I love my job. I love the people I work with. My principal is great. And I like the district I work for, even though I cannot tell you where I work or what district it is. They've asked me not to say that anymore.
No worries. I'm sure we'll get into some of the reason behind that.
Yeah, like everybody knows, but I can't say it.
Sure, that's fair. So yeah, fast forward today, you are a middle school science teacher. You have this fascinating side gig as a TikToker and content creator, which we'll talk about. What are some of the things that you love about teaching today? And what are some of the things that maybe you like a little bit less?
Yeah. I think and like, I always hesitate because people have really strong feelings about teachers and how we're supposed to be and what we're supposed to say. So what I'm supposed to tell you is I love my students, and they are what keeps me coming into the building every day. And some days that's true. I'm excited to see them. I love when they figure stuff out. I love when they get excited about things. I love when they ask questions. They're funny and they're interesting, and sometimes they invite you into their lives. Like, I got to go to a quinceañera, I got to go to different birthday parties, there's the school play. Like, I love that. But I think what keeps me coming year after year is I love teachers just as people. I think it is truly a calling. That first day of teacher school, I was like, oh my God, these are my people. These are my people. I had never experienced that in a group of actors, and I didn't experience it really at Whole Foods. But when I walked in on the first day of teacher school, I was like, yeah, these are my people. And I think that is part of why I do the TikTok that I do, because I just love teachers and I love the teacher community. But yeah, I love teachers and I love being a teacher, and the identity part of it is really exciting. So my students are great, don't get me wrong. And the summer's off, like, that's cool or whatever, but I just love teachers. I always have since I was a little kid. I just think they're cool people.
For what it's worth, I agree. And as a lot of people who listen to this know, I'm married to one and I was going to be one. So I'm biased, but totally agree. I'm curious, like, it's funny, you answered your question with, you're like, I'm supposed to say this.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what's something about teachers that the broader general public gets wrong? Because I think from my own worldview, I think teaching is something that, like, because we all have some kind of a connection or touch point, right? You either were a student, you have kids, whatever. I think people just feel like they understand what it means to be a teacher. So I guess from your point of view as a teacher, like, what are some of the things that maybe the broader general public gets wrong about life as a teacher?
I think it's the expectation that I'm trying to choose my words really carefully here. I think that people don't realize how hard it is because they have been in the classroom of master teachers who make it look easy. And when we say it's difficult, they're like, but it doesn't look hard. Like, you just talk. And there's a lot more to it, right? It's like when you watch somebody make challah bread. Like, boy, that looks easy, but I don't know if you've ever tried to make challah before. It's not easy. Or like, my boyfriend loves disc golf and he makes it look so easy that when I step up and try it, I'm like, this is impossible. How does anybody do this? Right. So we have been in classrooms with teachers who are doing a great job, and you don't understand all the mechanics that go into it. So I think that's part of it. I think the other part is it's a confusing job because you have a lot of autonomy, but you don't at the same time. You are in a deeply personal job, but you're by yourself. Like, I am in the classroom with a lot of people who are children, and thankfully we're in a good union state, but in other states, like, teachers compete with each other, which I can't even, this job is so hard to do that on top of it. The other thing I think people, I don't think they get it wrong. I just think it's an unexamined belief. Like, teachers need to be saints, or teachers need to be a role model, but they need to be a role model in the way that I think they need to be a role model. And like, teacher is an identity that we expect teachers to have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like, you're not going to get fired if you wear a bikini to the beach, but there are like teachers who get in trouble if they post a picture of themselves on vacation in a bikini on their Instagram. And like,
Totally.
that's like, I get it because I wasn't a teacher until I was 30. Like, I get it. I don't want to see my kid's teacher in a bikini, but like, we got to live, my guy. Like,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I think that's a belief that people have. And I think part of it is that it's a female driven field. There's a lot of
Yeah.
expectations about how women are supposed to be. So, yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of that, I mean, you mentioned this idea of being a teacher as a calling, and I think
Mhm.
sometimes, like, yes, that can be totally true, but I think sometimes that can kind of obscure real conversations
Yeah.
about teacher working conditions, teacher pay, all that, because it's like, oh, you're here because you're giving of yourself, and this is just what you should be doing. I'm
Hmm.
curious your thoughts on that, and then I guess let me also sort of pitch this to you. Like, to me, during that little pandemic, or pandemic as some people like to call it, there was this moment, kind of like with nurses, where I think parents especially, but kind of the broader public, was like, oh my goodness, I could never be a teacher. I could, like, really, teachers are doing this? Like, oh, I so appreciate you. We love you. We should pay teachers more. Like, all those kinds of things. And then it kind of went away. Like, then we moved on with our lives, and I think that conversation largely sort of stopped. But it felt like for this moment in time, people were like, oh wow, we should really think more about how we treat and pay and all that with teachers. I'm just curious your kind of thoughts on those two questions.
Yeah. So, to your first point, I think because I worked other jobs before becoming a teacher, that has informed my views about my working conditions. A lot of
Hmm.
people who come into teaching, this is their first real job. Maybe they were a lifeguard or like a tutor,
Yeah.
but a lot of people start teaching at 22 and they don't have enough work experience to go, is this a work problem? Is this a me problem? Is this an educational system problem?
Hmm.
So I think teachers sort of impact their own working conditions by not taking the perspective of I am a worker,
Hmm.
um, and this is a job. I was
Yeah.
having a lot of my uncle's getting married next weekend, and it's the beginning of the school year, and I was having a lot of guilt about taking 2 days off at the beginning of the school year to go to this wedding. And I called one of my teacher friends, and she's like, "Girl, they would replace you tomorrow. Like, you cannot put this job in front of your family."
Hmm.
But we're asked to do that all the time. We're asked to work sick. We're asked to skip. Like, I've never been to my nephew's birthday is the beginning of the school year. I've never attended one of his birthday parties.
Sure.
Back in South Dakota, I often in the past have put my students in front of my own family,
Yeah.
and I feel like those kind of asks are not given. Like, my boyfriend sells wine. Like, they would never ask him to do that.
Yeah.
Um, so I think there's that. I think that during lockdown, a lot of us were like, "Whoa, like, this job can be kind of sustainable." um,
Hmm.
and I think that colored a lot of people's opinions when you saw teachers with more work-life balance.
Hmm.
Um, I think that accelerated that shift from heroes to like lazy bums sitting at home. The other
Hmm.
thing is, I'm pretty politically aware, and I like follow the far right, and I follow these anti-public school sentiments, and they really took advantage of the lockdown situation to paint teachers as lazy and entitled, and the union as corrupt and wanting to keep the schools closed, and wanting, for what nefarious purpose, I don't know,
Yeah.
that I have not been able to unearth. It's just that teachers are lazy and entitled and um whiners, right?
Yeah.
So I think that when you this shift of opinion about teachers that we're seeing in the media right now is very orchestrated, and it's orchestrated by people who want to privatize education
Hmm.
and get some of that sweet government money because it's not super well regulated.
Hmm.
I read a lot about this, and there are people who are making a lot of money opening charters in different parts of the
Hmm.
country with different rules. Charters that don't, that they'll take the money, sweetheart around with, usually with buildings. What are buildings called? when you invest in buildings.
Real estate.
Real estate. Yep. So I own the building that the charter school is in, and I lease it out to the district. So I'm making the money twice. And along with anyway, I sound like a tinfoil hat person here, but it's a very carefully it's a very carefully orchestrated media push to delegitimize public education, which is ridiculous because something like 90% of people send their kids to public school, and about that many approve of their public school. But if you ask them, do they approve of public schooling in general, they'll be like, no, but my public school is great. But I don't think, it's really interesting. And I talk about this on my channel all the time because you don't think about it unless you're in the soup, right? Like I'm swimming in the soup every day.
Yeah. Huh.
So your face right now is like, oh yeah.
No, I'm like, I got to go down the rabbit hole. It's one of those things that a lot of what you talk about, I think, are educational systems, as well as capitalism and the intersection of education. So, none of it sadly surprises me. Yeah. But you sort of shining a light on someone who's like, oh yeah, I don't know that much about it.
Well, do your own research, guys. Read Diane Ravitch. She's the one.
So I'd like to, just get a few more thoughts on kind of your views on public education writ large, and then we'll dig into TikTok a little bit. So I read a recent article on the NEA's website, and just a couple of stats to hit you with, which I'm sure you're well aware, but I'm not sure our listeners are. 55% of educators are thinking about leaving the profession earlier than planned. Disproportionate amount of Black and Hispanic / Latino educators are looking to leave. So those numbers are higher for some of those populations. There was a net loss of 600,000 teachers that left between January of 2020 and January of 2022. In the same article, NEA President Becky Pringle called it a 5-alarm crisis.
Yeah.
And so I guess I'm wondering, Mandi, do you agree with her? Are we in an educational crisis right now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We have openings at our building, and that never happens. Everybody wants to come work at our school, and we still have unfilled positions. So what people have said, I did not come up with this phrase, is there's not a teacher shortage. There's a shortage of people who are willing to put up with what we put up with. There's lots of people who hold teaching degrees who aren't working in the field for very legitimate reasons. And there is a real struggle with, everybody knows it's broken, right? Nobody is going to be like, yeah, everything's going so awesome. I love that my student goes to a school that's full of mice. That's so awesome. And sitting on stools that are 40 years old or whatever. We all agree, but the solution, unfortunately, is to raise taxes. And there's absolutely no politician that's going to be like, yup. Yeah. Right. So it takes the Democratic trifecta to make change. It takes the teachers' unions, which there's a concerted effort in conservative circles to take down the teachers' union, specifically the NEA. It's the largest public sector union in the country. There are more union members in the NEA than in any other industry or any other union. And they throw a lot of money at pro-education candidates. So if you can defund the NEA, which is a hashtag that you see on Twitter, then that money can go elsewhere. So potential is what they think. Those candidates that are propped up by the NEA don't have their footing or backing.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely a teacher shortage for sure. Obviously, there's I have a class of 32, which is the biggest class I've had in a long time, but is a small class for some people. When I student taught in Minneapolis, I had a chemistry class of 43.
Oh my goodness.
Kids were sitting on radiators. So
crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. I feel like the next struggle here in Minnesota should be around class size. We tried to have some legislation passed last year to set class size caps. But a lot of arguments against it are really valid. If you have smaller classes, you're going to need more teachers, and teachers are the biggest chunk of school budgets. because employees are the biggest chunk of most budgets, but apparently when it's teachers, that's something shocking and disgusting. But I guarantee that Whole Foods spends most of its money paying its workers, not buying products. I mean, I don't know. Somebody out there will tell me I'm wrong, but like labor is the largest chunk of any business. But when you say it's teachers, then again, we're greedy, we're overpaid, we're lazy. Oh, that money should be going to students. Well, yeah, but like I teach the students. Like I have to be there. It is going to the students.
Yeah, I don't again, I'm very like biased and sort of deeply, like my friends are teachers, my family's teachers, but I just don't understand why it's so hard for people to kind of make that connection. There's a phrase that I've seen you use a lot, and I know others, which is like teachers' working conditions or students' learning conditions.
Yep.
Maybe I butchered it, but
no, that's exactly right.
Yeah, it's like it's such an easy connection again in my mind that I'm not sure why not more people understand that.
I think something you're saying is that you have a lot of positive associations with teachers, and I don't think that that's universal, right? Everybody has to go through the school system. And when you hear about, a teacher, you can think about sweet Miss Basinger, my second grade teacher, or I can think about, my physics teacher who I didn't like or whatever.
Yeah.
It's easy to turn teachers into villains because we've all had bad teachers, or we've all had teachers that we didn't like. And I think that again, talking about school is and talking about teachers and whatever, it's a very emotionally charged conversation always.
Yeah.
Always. Because we all had to do it. And I had a great educational experience. I loved school. I got a lot of validation out of school. But like my boyfriend, he didn't have a bad experience, but like he didn't see the point, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Not everyone has the same experience that
absolutely
you, and it sounds like I did. There's a lot to love about SK Coffee, our presenting sponsor for Connection Request. Every time I talk to SK's founder, Sam Chelberg, I'm fascinated to learn more about what makes their coffee so special and why people are so drawn to them. Here's Sam.
We're not a company that you're going to get the exact same thing over and over again. It's always going to be an exploration. This is literally an agricultural product, and every year it's different. So it's like wine in that way.
But something even more special than the coffee itself has always stood out to me. It's the entire SK team's passion. They treat their work like a real art form, and each of them care deeply about coffee's people, place, and process. Here's Sam again.
The way we're trying to tell that story is not through, interesting crafted cocktail coffee drinks, right? It's all, what is the coffee trying to say? What is the producer, the place, the plant itself trying to say, the process? And we are literally translating that communication from the raw product into your cup.
To learn more about SK Coffee, visit skcoffeeplease.com or check out their excellent Instagram page. If you live in Minnesota, stop into one of their cafes in St. Paul or Minneapolis. You might even spot me there. All those links are in the show notes. Okay, now back to the show. Let's talk about TikTok. We likely wouldn't be here, the two of us talking today, if it weren't for TikTok. Let's talk about your journey. So as you said, you've kind of been doing it for 3 years. I actually went today and scrolled back all the way to the beginning of yours. It took me a long time in my thumb. But it seems to me like you kind of started off and you're just posting things here and there. Tell us a little bit about why you started and kind of the adventure that it's taken you on ever since.
So as I've said before on my channel, I am motivated almost completely by spite. And I started my TikTok because so when you when you're a teacher, you have to set these goals and write about them. So I had put, this was during lockdown, I had put that I wanted to improve my tech skills, which is really the only thing you could pick because you can't work on your classroom management over Zoom. Yeah. So I had picked I want to work on my tech skills, and I had said that I was proficient and I wanted to get to exemplar, something like that. And the administrator who reviewed my document said that I couldn't mark myself as proficient because then it wouldn't be it's not right. You have to mark yourself as developing. And I was like, but on the rubric, I'm proficient. I really got mad about it. So I was like, fine, I'll show her. And part of getting to the highest level on this Danielson rubric is teaching others in your field. So I was like, fine. Then that's what I did on TikTok, is I taught other teachers how to use the Google Suite. I've always been pretty techie.
Yeah.
Taught them how to use the Google Suite, taught them about educational software things I found, like Songlio and Blookit, and those all sound like made up things if you're not in education. But and then I started making games. I had been a trivia host the whole time I've lived in the Twin Cities. So I love making trivia games, and I just love games in general. So I started making classroom games that people could play. I made random trivia like Kahoots and Blookits and stuff, and I would share those out. So yeah, that's sort of where I started. And then the curse of the teacher TikToker is, what do you talk about in the summer? That is the curse of the teacher TikToker. So I started to do a little bit more personality content, and I've always been interested in unions, and I identify as an anarchist, and I talked about my political beliefs, which got me into some hot water. Sure. But people want to hear about that. They want to know about that. They want to know about, like you said before, the intersection between public education and capitalism, and sharing my thoughts about that. Thinking of yourself as a teacher, as a worker. You're not a saint. You're not a priest.
Yeah.
You're a worker.
And entitled to the same rights that everybody else has at their job, right? Yeah,
you exchange your time for money, right? Yeah. Like, you're a worker. So yeah, and then people really wanted to know about the union. Yeah. And talking about my teachers union and how effective our teachers union is, how St. Paul Federation of Educators gets stuff done and makes real change. People really wanted to know about that. Yeah. So I've kind of become the de facto like union teacher on TikTok.
Yeah. Well, I've just got to say, like, you seem sort of perfectly designed for this moment in this medium, right?
Yeah, like, I agree.
You're a theater person. You love talking. You've talked about how you seek attention, which I kind of love that you talk about that openly. You you have this whole website where you have resources for teachers. So you kind of started like that, but it just seems like I'm really happy for you that a lot of people are finding your content, are finding value in it, and it's just kind of growing from there. And again, like we sort of talked about, I think before we started recording, my partner is a teacher, and she was like, you have to talk to Mandi. She just like has such fabulous content and fabulous stuff. And so I can say for certain you are making an impact on the teacher community. And I'm sure you get hopefully that kind of feedback all the time. I'm just curious, like, now that it has become a part of you, right, in a way that it wasn't when you started 3 years ago. How do you view it now? Is it something fun to do? Is it something to bring awareness to issues you care about? Is it a potential business, right? Like, are you making money from it yet, or could you be someday? I'm just curious, like, how does it fit into your life now?
Yeah, so I have, over the years, I've had to kind of come to terms with different things. Like, if you're going to put yourself out there, people are going to make fun of you. If you're going to put yourself out there, people are going to criticize you.
Yeah.
You're going to go through creative droughts. You're going to hate the way you look. There are times when I like can't even look at myself in that little camera screen. Yeah. It's deeply personal. So as far as creative drought, that one was easy to overcome because I have an improv background, and what I have learned is not to judge my ideas, right? Like, the internet's going to do that for me. If I have an idea and I think this is a good TikTok and I'm not going to get fired if I say this, I just put it out there. And like, who cares? Like, what's great about TikTok as a medium and why I haven't moved to like YouTube or Instagram. Well, I have an Instagram, but it doesn't do that well. Anyway, is what is acceptable as content on TikTok is so different from every other medium. You can do literally anything on TikTok, and if somebody doesn't like it, they just zoop. It's super easy to see something else. or do something else. So I really feel like it is a platform that works for me. I have tried, like, I tried to be famous on Twitter or whatever, and like I tried to have like a really curated Instagram, and it's too much work. It's not the right platform for me. So yeah, so we have my boyfriend too. He's a big part of this and like helping me just like deal with the emotional I want everyone to like me, and that is unrealistic.
Yeah.
So
I can relate.
it has been a really emotional journey. Now I'm to a place where like it's really fun. I don't really care, like, in the nicest way possible. One of the things that I am working on right now is not Robin Hooding, is what I call it. So when you talk about social issues on your platform, occasionally people will be like, "Can you please talk about this thing? Can you please talk about this thing?" And I have to be careful because, especially if it's not local, I don't have all the context, you know?
Sure.
I don't, and like, I don't want to get myself wrapped up in a situation where I am like heavily advocating for something that I don't understand.
Yeah.
So I try to use my platform for good, or what I see as good. I have to be kind of judicious and make. I'm just so glad I'm 37 doing this. You know, like, if you're 25, I was so stupid when I was 25. Like,
Yeah.
I would not know how to do this. But I feel like more than anything, I just am exploring and really testing the limits of my own authenticity. I can't be fully myself on TikTok. I'll get fired. I cuss too much. I am too negative, you know. The way that teachers talk among teachers is different than we would talk
With a student.
with the public. And I have to be mindful of that on my platform, right? Like, I can't, and I got burned a lot in the beginning. I got burned and I would get like canceled, and then I would have to come back. Like, and a lot of it is not so much what I said, but how I said it, you know?
Sure. Are
So
your students watching your TikToks?
they do watch my TikToks. I've asked them not to. And I explain it to them, like, I'm not making content for you. This is the first day of school. I just bring it up on the very first day of school. I got that advice from somebody on TikTok. Because they're middle schoolers, right? So if you act like it's something naughty, then they're just obsessed and they can't let it go. So by naming it and like saying, this is what I do, this is my hobby or whatever. I ask them not to follow me. If they start commenting a lot, or if they comment at all, and they're like, "Hi, Ms. Jung, this is so-and-so from third period," blocked. Like, and if they're under 13, I report them.
Sure. There you go. Love that.
And I tell them I'm going to, because it's for their safety, right? Like, there are so many creeps out there. So yeah, and I tell them, you know, I'm obviously not going to follow you. It's definitely weird if a 37-year-old adult woman follows a 12-year-old on the internet. Like, that's weird, and they get it. So yeah, they know about my TikTok.
It seems like you've developed some really good like boundaries and kind of context around what you do.
I try.
Don't I'm sure. So let's dig into it. You know, because of your TikTok fame and what you've been doing, you have been on Good Morning America. You have really like grown your following, and from where I sit, it seems like you've gotten some neat opportunities.
Yeah, for sure.
But as we've kind of alluded to, you've also been signaled out by Fox News and the Daily Mail. You've received what I imagine to be a ton of negative attention and hate, and you said yourself you've been canceled. I'm sure there's plenty more. How do you kind of grapple with the balance between sort of the positive energy that you get, as well as the drawbacks and the negative? And then I'll also say, we were talking before we started recording, it seems like probably the former president of the United States has like maybe sort of referenced you, which I can't imagine what that's like. So how do you deal with sort of the good and what I assume is the bad?
So the Fox News stuff was really weird. The first brush with this was Libs of TikTok, which is an account on Twitter that is pretty nasty. They had posted one of my videos where I was expressing support for LGBTQ students, and Alpha News, which is a local news outlet here in the Twin Cities, wrote an article about it. And I found it randomly. Like, they didn't reach out to me for comment. I had just Googled myself one day, and there it popped up. Uh, and the whole summer I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get fired because I found it in June. And when I came back to school, my principal was like, yeah, that was really stupid. That whole thing was really dumb. I was like, okay, cool. So, what's nice about the situation, or like how I'm dealing with it, is I don't do anything online that I'm going to get fired for. I just don't. If I'm going to say, I don't film in my classroom anymore, the district has asked me not to do that because of all the threats against my life and the school we were receiving. For my students' safety, I can't film in my classroom anymore, which is a bummer. I really love my classroom and I like showing it off, but I get it. Obviously, the students' safety comes before my like desire to have a cute backdrop.
Sure.
But it's weird. I'm going to name drop really quickly here. So throughout the course of TikTok, I have become friends with the Attorney General, Keith Ellison.
No big deal.
No big deal. And I talked to him about this, and he said to me, Mandi, if they haven't killed me and they haven't killed Ilhan, they're not going to kill you. And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. And that honestly, like that made me feel better, because I had talked to the police, and the police had said something like, the people who threaten you aren't the people you need to worry about. It's the people who don't threaten you. And I was like, oh my God. And here's really where it comes down to, I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. And if I go down swinging for trans kids and kids in the LGBTQ community, I can sleep at night. Like, and by the way, if they kill me, I want you to burn down a police station. Just, that's what I would have wanted. Is what I tell people, that I'm gonna get fired. God, Fox News is gonna eat that one up. But what helps me sleep at night is I know why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I also understand the purpose of why they're doing what they're doing. Their goal is to make me feel small and alienate me and make me feel like I am a weirdo for believing what I believe. And I know that I am not in the minority, right? Like, I know that what I think is not only morally right, it is what most people feel and know to be true. So leaning on others really has helped me through this. And honestly, so I went to a Knowledge Bowl tournament up in Coon Rapids, and I was really nervous about it because it's more conservative in Coon Rapids. So I asked my boyfriend to come with me to the tournament. And at the tournament, you feel like everybody's looking at you and like talking about you. They're probably not, but a man came up and kind of grabbed me. A big man grabbed me, and I was like, oh God, oh God. And he was crying, and he was like, I'm the president of the like teachers union here, and I just feel so bad for you, and know that we're standing with you, and know that we're with you. And my boyfriend was like really scared because a big man grabbed me. But the people who live here, the people who matter, the people whose children I'm teaching, they're with me, and that's what really matters. Who cares what somebody in, you don't even go here, right? Like, from Mean Girls, like, you don't even go. Why do you care so much? You don't even go here. So a little perspective. A little perspective helps. Because really the
other
purpose,
than the fact that he grabbed you, let's all just say, like,
it was a little weird.
Like,
he was overcome with emotion. I'm also very grabbable. I have that I give off that vibe. But yeah, the people who's and like one of the families at my school made me a gift basket with like wine in it, and like, my coworkers all stand in solidarity with me, and it's just really silly. Like, they're trying to make me into a boogeyman. When I spoke to Education Minnesota, the media director was like, you know why they picked you, right? And I was like, yeah, because I'm weird looking. And he's like, exactly. It's because you're weird looking. You have the look of the monster that they want to make. So like, I feel I live my life by this Marie Curie quote: nothing is to be feared, it is only to be understood. So the more that I understand their gameplay and my role within it, the easier it is for me to contextualize and to make fun of. My response always to bullies my whole life, because I've always been like fat and weird looking and loud and obnoxious. And my response to bullies my whole life is to get them laughing, or to get everybody else laughing at them if I can. And that's what I do on my platform. I mean, I'm printing T-shirts with my Fox News mugshot.
Amazing. Well, I gotta. I mean, I've spent a lot of my life on the internet and sort of studied people and thought about people, and I just really admire kind of the approach you've taken, and also the what I imagine is kind of the thick skin you've developed. I'm really glad you have a person there in your life who's sort of like part of that emotional support system as well. But yeah,
it was really hard before the article dropped because Paul was scared for me, and he was like, you're not untouchable, is what he said to me. And that was to know that I was impacting his life with these silly little tiki-takis I was making.
Sure.
Was really hard.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Let's shift gears a little bit. Based on your experience, Mandi, you've been a teacher for a long time now, but you've also, as you mentioned, had like other careers before that. What do you tell to newer teachers or anybody thinking about going into the teaching profession right now? What's kind of your message to them?
I say do it. It's really fun. I think find the joy, find the wins. When I was working in the children's theater, we had a really rough week in this little town in Montana. And I remember calling home office and being like, the only kid who is having fun is Marty. And the Kim on the other end of the line was like, well, then do it for Marty. And I try to remember that in my classroom. Like, it's really, as humans, we're designed to pay attention to the negative.
Yeah.
And most of the class is fine. Most of the class is having a good time. Lean on your other teachers. Everybody is real busy, especially at the beginning of the school year. And that's when you feel the most isolated. But teachers are teachers all the time. We want to help you. We know what's best for kids. And we know that by helping you as a new teacher, we are helping our students. And I guess the other thing I will say is like, try to separate. This was really helpful perspective building for me, is like, what is a teacher problem? What is a me problem? And what is a system problem? So like for the me problems, I really needed to meal plan because I wasn't getting enough food. And I really needed to like deal with my stuff in order to deal with my teacher stuff in order to live within the system stuff.
Yeah.
So, it's fun. And just like, there's so much pressure to be an amazing teacher. And, you feel like you're messing the kids up if you make a mistake or if you falter in any way. And like, bro, it's a job. You're not the only teacher they're ever going to have. You're not the only adult they're ever going to deal with. I think as a white person, you have to get rid of a lot of that white savior. You have to really examine that belief system and like just cut yourself some slack, bro, or you're never going to make it. That was a lot.
No, I think that's really good advice. And I'll just say, like, I'm really happy we're chatting because, again, we've talked, like, I was going to be a teacher. A lot of my friends are teachers, family, but also a lot of them have left the profession for all sorts of different reasons, right? But I'm really glad to see someone who clearly has such joy and positivity, and it's been good to you, despite, right, you're also still fighting for better rights and pay and all those kind of things. Conditions. So I'm really glad to hear kind of what you're talking about. Sorry, go on.
Well, and something else that really helps me in my profession is that I have built a really good community. And that was very intentional when we got a new teacher at our school, Camila. She was like, do you even know the people you work with? And we were like, no. And she's a very community driven person, and she's brought us together. And now the women that I work with are my best friends. I'm gonna cry. I love them so much. So fine, like being brave enough to build community in your school and like make friends with the other teachers. Not everybody wants to be your friend and like whatever, but your teacher friends, really, because they they get it. They really get it, and they give good advice and like make friends with the people you work with. I'm gonna cry. I love them so much.
That is really beautiful. And
Well,
so much I think of what you're talking about today, whether it's those frameworks of separating out yourself versus the system, building community and finding community, I think to me are really applicable to other professions as well,
absolutely.
right? It's like, that's, I think, one thing interesting that I think you've found ways to do is like, this is a job, this is, and also like all these things that we've been told about teachers and what to expect don't have to be the way that they are.
Right.
I think that's really interesting. Mandi, do you think you'll be doing this in 10 years and 15 years and 20 years? What does the future of Mandi hold right now? Or don't you think about that?
I guess I don't think about that. One of the things I would like to try someday is I would love to make educational videos for kids. I would love to do that or like consult on something like that.
Yeah. You'd be great
I
at
could
that.
never see myself working for profit. I think whatever I do, if I continue teaching, which I really want to, I would love to be teaching my whole career. Like I just I have ADHD. Like this is the perfect job. And I unfortunately with TikTok, because I built my whole brand about being a teacher. It's like I can't quit.
Have you like in your time, have you thought about quitting? Is that
Oh
something
yeah, for sure. But it's not so much like I want to quit as like take this job and shove it. Like I don't want to just quit teaching. I want to quit all the jobs.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think because I worked so many jobs before becoming a teacher, it's easy for me to separate like this is a job problem with like this is an interpersonal problem or this is a whatever problem. Teaching really suits my personality. It suits my skill set in a way that like, working as a cashier at Whole Foods, I just felt like I was dying inside. And like working as an actor and having my life be run by the whims of a casting director or I like the autonomy that teaching provides me, and I like that it's different every day. And again, like I just feel like I'm well suited to this profession.
Yeah.
Because I tried other jobs and I didn't like them.
Yeah. I kind of love that about your journey, right? It's sort of the opposite of a lot of people's, which is really cool. I'm just curious, for anybody listening to this right now, for those of us who aren't sort of as centered in education as you are, what's one thing that we should know about and care about right now?
I think that you sure insist that school buildings get fixed up. They're not safe. That is something that, it is. Well, and I think be really skeptical of this push to privatization would be the two. So something practical is like, please fix up the buildings. They're gross and falling down. And something more philosophical is just be very skeptical of this push for vouchers, this push for increased charters, this movement away from public education for the public. You cannot have a democracy without public education. And I think
one more time for the people in the back.
Right. And I think another thing to think about, like an expansive thought, is how can we decouple education with capitalism, in that my job is to create workers for the workforce. Right. That is the Department of Education. That is like one of their core beliefs, is to prepare students for career. And if all that we do in our life is prepare for work, I love my job, but I am not my job. I am more than this. I am more than what I do for, 9 hours or 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
So I would love, Fox News kind of roasted me for saying that I feel like the purpose of education is to learn about nature. They put that in quotes, which I did say, but it's true. Like education, the school should be a place where you learn about other people and you learn about the world and you ask questions and you get curious. So I feel, and you learn how to coexist with others. And I just feel like when we say that schools aren't preparing kids for the workforce, like maybe not for this workforce, but work looks really different today than it did 5 years ago even.
Yeah, big time.
So yeah, I would ask people to question the belief that the purpose of schooling is to prepare kids for the workforce. Those aren't
One
fun
more
things.
No, they're really important things,
Yeah.
which I appreciate it. One more question before we get on to the rapid fire. I have it on good authority that you have an interesting story about Dave Matthews. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share it on this here podcast.
Absolutely. My God. So I work. I took a break from the children's theater because I was desperately in love with a guy that I went to high school with, named Trevor Leonard. He knows this. So he was living in Seattle, so I moved out to Seattle to make Trevor Leonard fall in love with me. And spoiler alert, it didn't work. But I got a job while I was there working at Red Light Vintage, which if you're familiar with the Macklemore song Thrift Shop, it's about Red Light Vintage.
Okay.
So Dave Matthews lives in a suburb of Seattle and is often spotted around town. So during Halloween, he brought in his daughter to shop for a Halloween costume at the Red Light Vintage store that I was working at. And everybody there, like all the other employees, were like, "That's Dave Matthews." And I was like, "No, it's not. He doesn't have a South African accent." That was like the only thing I knew about Dave Matthews, was that he had lived in South Africa, which I don't even know if that's like true.
Okay.
So I just thought he was like a really hot dad. So I was helping him and he kept looking at me like, "Don't you know who I am?" And I was like, "No."
You're not Dave Matthews, sir.
"I know that you're not Dave Matthews." So I go and ring him up and we ask for ID. And it's Dave Matthews. Like, it is Dave Matthews. So I'm like shaking as I hand him back. Like, he can see that I have figured out that he is Dave Matthews. And we have a little like atrium. So he walks through the first door and I immediately hit the ground behind the cash register. And I'm like screaming, everybody's laughing. Frickin' Dave Matthews comes back in and leans over the counter at me, squirming and rolling on the ground. He was like, just want to say thanks for the great customer service.
Oh no.
I got trolled by Dave Matthews.
Oh no. That's amazing. Well, I don't know what I was expecting, but that's even better than whatever I was expecting.
So good. Oh, that's man.
Amazing. Wow. Okay. Very quickly, I told you about this before we started recording. I just want to get, like, I feel like you're a person with takes. And I just want to get
lots of uninformed opinions.
I want to get some Mandi takes on a variety of educational issues. All right. Okay. So like kind of like 1 to 2 sentences or less about each of these things. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Okay. Number 1, free lunch for students.
Yay! Hundo P.
Love it. Okay, great. Book bans.
Boo! If you don't want to read it, don't check it out.
Love it. Critical race theory.
Yes, people should be aware that there is race and that it impacts the decisions the government makes.
Teacher unions.
A+, but they should be doing more at the local level. Like I have some criticism for the big nationals. Get your locals going.
Cool.
That's where you make change.
Nice and nuanced. Teachers spending their own money on school supplies, which allegedly an average of $648, maybe more. But what do you think?
I think we shouldn't do it. I think that we also shouldn't judge people who do.
Beautiful.
We are under this umbrella. We are in this system. We're all trying to do the best we can, and you should not shame people for doing the best they can.
Yeah. Wow. Lovely. And last but not least, my wonderful partner who is a teacher told me she picked up this one from Teacher Talk. An idea to have substitute teaching be like jury duty, where we force everyone to do it to gain a better understanding of what it's like. What do you think?
I mean, sure, but some of you shouldn't be in schools.
That's a really good shout. Maybe there could be some kind of system to sort of weed out those people, but otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, I also feel like everybody should work customer service.
Me too. Big time.
Yeah.
Mandi, thank you so much for taking some precious time on a weekend to chat
my
with
pleasure.
me. Where can people follow you and your journey and anything else you want to plug for today?
Okay, so I'm Sabocat on TikTok. which is an anarchist symbol. Fox News. They haven't picked up on that. And then I am Sabocat, I think, _teacher on every other platform.
Cool. You also...
And then I have a website for
I was going to
teachers.
say, your website is great. Tons of resources. Lots of
Sabocat
good
teacher,
stuff.
all for free.
It's
all fully editable.
cool. Well, Mandi, I just thank you for doing this. I've said this throughout, but I think the work you're doing both on TikTok and other places, also in my own community, is really wonderful. I just appreciate you as a human being and a teacher and spreading some awesome things for the world.
Why wouldn't I make time to get complimented?
Well, hey, that's, I just really appreciate the work you do and for coming on and spending some time with us to kind of demystify the world of teaching and give us your thoughts. So thank you for joining us today on Connection
It's my
Request.
pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That is it for today's episode of Connection Request. If you enjoyed today's episode, would you make sure you're following us? It'd mean a lot. Today's show is produced by Marie Iannazzo and me, Joel Leeman. Our theme music is by the amazing Mike Lauer and his band Viewers Like You. It's from their album Panoramia. The show is a production of Shrug Content, a podcast studio based in Minnesota. You can learn more about us at shrugcontent.com. Special thanks to SK Coffee, our presenting sponsor. You can learn more about them at skcoffeeplease.com. If you live around the Twin Cities, ping me. I'll take you there myself. First cup is on me. You can connect with the show on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. Send us feedback, guest ideas, and funny TikToks at connect@shrugcontent.com. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.